Dana Hager, and welcome to my kitchen. Today, I would like to show you how I make stuffed mushrooms. This is not just any recipe that you can find on the internet or in a recipe book. This is a recipe that my mom has done many times and has shown me how to do it. And it's been passed on from generation before her. And so I like to share with you as to why I like this recipe. First of all, I really like mushrooms. I could eat mushrooms every day. I like them raw in salads. I like them sauteed, definitely stuffed. I like them fried, you name it. Any way you fix it, I will eat mushrooms. These mushrooms that I'm going to be using today are your regular, I guess, white small mushrooms. You could use the mini portobello mushrooms or the bella mushrooms, but I found that by using those, they're a little larger and also they have a little more water. So these are just perfect. You really don't want them any bigger, but you also want to pick them because I just wanted to show you I have here. If you go any smaller than this, they will be hard to fill and to put the filling inside if they get too small. But I wanted to share with you a story before I go over all the ingredients that go into this dish. I think the reason I like mushrooms so much is that when I was growing up as a child living in Italy, I often visited my grandfather, and this is the area where my mom grew up. And it is an area that is known not only for chestnuts, but also there are many mushrooms, different types of varieties of mushrooms. And my grandfather was very knowledgeable in knowing which kind to pick, which were good to eat and which were poisonous and to stay away from. I recall specifically one summer visiting him and the other family members who lived there. And one day my sister and I decided to go into the woods to look for some mushrooms. So we went on our way and my sister found this beautiful, huge mushroom. It was gorgeous color. We picked a few more and we went back home, and we were so proud, and she was so proud to show it to my grandfather that she had found this wonderful mushroom. And we were getting ready to ask my aunt to cook it for us. Well, he started laughing when he looked at the mushroom. He says, honey, you know, it's really beautiful. It's great in size, but you know what? It's poisonous. You don't want to eat this. You're not going to feel very well very quickly. So she was a little bit disappointed, to say the least, that it wasn't edible, but it certainly was great. So I think from that point on, we decided that we'd let our grandfather pick the right kind of mushrooms to eat. Well, these don't come from the woods. I don't know where they came from, where they've been grown. They're definitely edible and they are not poisonous. So of course, this is the main ingredient that you will need. You will also need some flour, and I have about 3 or 4 tablespoons, and I'm being a little bit vague about the amounts of some of these ingredients because, as you'll see, as we cook the stems of the mushrooms and add these ingredients, you will look for a certain consistency. So I can tell you, eyeball it, how much you will need, but you'll need to start off and have it ready just in case, about 3 or 4 tablespoons of flour. The same goes with the breadcrumbs, about 3 or 4 tablespoons. Here I have just some crushed tomatoes, fresh tomatoes. You can use any kind. They've actually been pureed. It's not cooked, but it is pretty thick. Again, about a half a cup. You may not need it all, but you want to have it just in case. Then I have about 3 to 4 tablespoons of onions. You will use all of this, and along with about an 1/8 teaspoon of salt and pepper. And then you will need about 3 tablespoons of butter. So to begin with, we will need to remove the stems from each of these mushrooms. Then I'm going to rinse them lightly just to get rid of some of the dirt that you can see here. I've already done so by just brushing it off, but I want to make sure that I get rid of all the excess dirt. So we're just going to be popping the stem, and then we will remove some of this outer layer and then rinse them. So I will go ahead and do that with each of these mushrooms. There's about 18 of them. If they're a little larger, you'll probably need about 12 to 14 for the amount of ingredients that I have here displayed. So I will do that, and I'll come back and show you once I finish that step. As you can see, I've cleaned the mushroom caps. I've actually first separated the stem from each of the caps, and then I've removed that thin membrane that was hanging over the edge, and also scooped some of the inside so that I'm creating a larger pocket or hole to put the filling in later on. They've been very lightly washed. Don't want to soak them because you don't want to create more moisture and water. Mushrooms contain a lot of moisture to begin with. And I've patted them dry really well, so they're really dry. And the stems that have been popped out of each of the mushroom caps, I've removed that thin layer. Again, there might be some dirt. So what I'm doing right now, that you see me doing, is I've taken each of these stems and I'm cutting them up into very small little pieces because this will be the filling. I will continue doing that with all of these stems that are here on the table, and when I'm finished with that step, we'll go over to the stove and I'll show you how to add the other ingredients. Now that I finished cutting up the stems, they're right here in this bowl, I'm ready to complete the filling for the caps, the mushroom caps. So here on the stove, I'm melting about 3 tablespoons of butter. So as you see, it's starting to bubble up. So I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of onion. And you want to have it on medium high. And then you want to add the stems as well. So I'm going to do that. You want to cook that for about 8 to 10 minutes. So I'll be back and I'll show you what it looks like. Also, before I come back, I just wanted to also make a correction. Earlier I talked about the amount of salt and pepper. I said it was 1/8 of a teaspoon. The amount that you saw here is actually 1/4. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be tasting it because I always want to make sure that I'm not adding too much salt or even too much pepper to the recipe. So we'll wait for this to gently brown, and then we'll be back and I'll show you how to add the other ingredients. As you can see, this has been cooking for about 8-9 minutes. It's turned a nice golden brown, so I think I'm ready now to start adding the flour and the tomato puree. You want this to turn into kind of a paste, so I'm going to just gauge it. I'm going to start with a generous tablespoon of flour and stir it in and just mix it in. And then do the same by adding some puree and judging to see if I need to add more. Again, this is based really on the amount of water from the mushroom stems. So I'm going to take this and put, again, a very generous couple of tablespoons. I may come back and add a little more flour if I see that it's too watery. While I'm mixing it, I'm going to put in some of that salt, not all of it, just some pinch. And then pepper and salt. As I said, I'll taste it. Another ingredient that needs to be added, and unfortunately I didn't have a chance to grab some at the grocery store today, is fresh parsley. So in its place, I'm adding some dry. I know it's not as flavorful, and I'm adding a very, very small amount, less than 1/8 of a teaspoon, because when it's dry, it's a little stronger. So you want to add maybe 1/4 fresh and cut up in pieces. So you can see it's still a little moist, so I think I may add a little more flour. I'm just going to lower just that a bit. Don't want it to stick. Just enough to gel it some more, and I'm going to stir it. So as you saw, I probably put less than 2 tablespoons and about almost 2 of tomato puree for the amount of stems that I had. Again, that's very hard to judge because they vary in size, so I can't tell you for sure how much you'll need. I'm going to take it off the stove for a minute, turn this off, and I'm going to go ahead and get a spoon, and I'll taste to see if I have enough salt and pepper to the mixture. So I'll go get a spoon. Definitely needs more salt and more pepper, so I'm going to add a little more. Again, that's really personal in terms of how salty you want this, but you definitely want to have it some flavor because the mushroom, you know, is kind of bland all by itself, and you definitely want the filling to be flavorful. Okay, so I think we're done. What we're going to do right now is you have to wait, or we'll have to wait for this to cool before we start filling the mushroom caps with this filling. So we'll wait and we'll come back once this is cooled enough. The filling has cooled off. As you can see, I've prepared this pan that will go in the oven that I'm preheating at 425. I've lined it with aluminum foil and I've sprayed some olive oil so that the mushroom caps won't stick to it. So I've placed them on the foil and I'm filling them, and as you can see, after I fill them, I'm putting a very thin layer of breadcrumbs. You can use regular breadcrumbs. I suggest that you don't use anything with additional flavor to it. You could use panko, but I find panko sometimes it's too coarse. If you don't have any breadcrumbs in the house, you can also use crackers. You can crush them up and put them on top. They'll work just fine. So I'm going to finish adding the breadcrumbs to the top and filling the last two. And then these will go in the oven at 425 for about 15 minutes. Don't they look delicious? They were in the oven for about 15 minutes at first, and then when I took a look at them, I wanted them to become a little more brown and sort of dry out a little bit of the filling. So I left them in there for another 3 more minutes, and this is what they look like now. They've definitely shrunk in size, and that's to be expected. That's why you want to make sure that you don't get mushrooms that are too small, just like these, because they really will not amount to much. But on the other hand, they are wonderful because they are finger food, and so they can be great for appetizers. You don't need a fork or a knife. You can just pop one in your mouth and enjoy, and that's what I'm going to do right now. È così delizioso. I love the taste of the breadcrumbs, the crunchiness, the flavor of the onion, and of course the mushroom, which comes out really nice and strong. So I know it's a lot of work, but it's a labor of love. It's well worth it. And I hope that you will give it a try and let me know what they taste like. Buon appetito.